Putin is on the move, despite what he says, despite what military spokesmen for the Russian government say about the fact that they are not in any way supporting the separatists. It's all just native Ukrainians who are fighting against their government. It is becoming increasingly clear, the evidence is mounting, that the Russians have effectively invaded a portion of Ukraine. We've been talking about this throughout the week, showing the evidence, trying to convince the Putin-financed trolls in our comment section that they are in fact invading, but so far they have not been convinced. So let's take it to video and satellite imagery. So first, you're going to see a video of a Russian tank in Ukraine. Let's take a look. So apparently someone's cell phone camera footage. This is a brave man, by the way. That tank could not be very far away.
Well, how do we know it's in the Ukraine?
This portion, at least, is allegedly. We are also seeing some shelling. I believe that was from Donetsk, yeah. I believe. But anyway, increasing evidence coming out. We also, if cell phone footage is not necessarily the most legitimate source, so let's go to the.
But now, as the footage has moved on, you see some places that are obviously.
Yeah. That's post-tank, I think.
It's post-tank.
When a tank comes in, stuff like that happens.
It didn't look much better before the tank, by the way.
Exactly. If you see like a Sonic in the background or something, it might not be the Ukraine.
Right.
But anyway, there's also this satellite imagery that has come out that is showing a column of artillery pieces, Russian artillery pieces moving in. Let's go to those. You're seeing there a number of them being identified, self-propelled artillery. This is dated just 1 week ago. I believe there's a second one as well.
And you can see the insert on the Russian map on the upper right there. You can see exactly in that square where this is, and it's on that Russian border. It's a place that became familiar to us geographically during the downing of the Malaysian plane as well.
Yeah, now of course you can choose to question the satellite imagery as well. Our experience going into the second war in Iraq leads us to possibly have some qualms about following what the US government or other governments say about satellite imagery. But more and more evidence is coming out that this is actually happening. We have a quote from Joseph Dempsey, who's a strategic studies analyst. He says, "The Soviet-era tanks operated by the separatists," we were showing you that tank, now we're going to talk about them, "have until now represented those that could have been potentially acquired internally within Ukraine, providing a degree of plausible deniability to any suspected third-party supplier." So basically, the tanks that we'd previously seen being operated in this region of Ukraine could have conceivably been taken from the Ukrainian military by the separatists up until this point. But now there's evidence that shows that that is no longer just the case, that they're no longer just ones that could have been taken from the Ukrainian military.
And this is somebody who knows this stuff. I mean, he's somebody who can look at one of these tanks and say, no, this tank is from the Russians. This could be an old tank that the Ukrainians had. This tank, however, no. This tank is clearly not something the separatists could have taken from their own government.
Exactly, and one of the best examples of that is one of the defensively accessorized tanks that they have details on. They saw one of the tanks is something called a T-72BM, a modern variant identifiable by its special Contact 5 explosive reactive armor that Russia has not exported but uses heavily in its own military. And so many of the tanks that Russia uses are variants of other tanks that many militaries around the globe use, but they would not have some of the extremely advanced defensive capabilities like with the explosive reactive armor, showing that this was not left behind by the Ukrainians who don't use that particular type of armor. Yeah. It was actually a Russian tank.
When I saw the Contact 5, I knew no way. Yeah. This is Russia never exports.
Yeah, I learned so much about it in Call of Duty. I know where that comes from. Okay.
But yeah, in fact, this is conclusive. I mean, if there are doubters in the comment section that you allude to, this kind of stuff is that you have an expert here. You have somebody who's looking at these photographs, identifying the artillery in them. You know, that nobody can, I mean, this is somebody who's clearly an expert talking about it. Yeah. This is the kind of evidence that makes this such a muddy situation in Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, and the satellite imagery, we showed you some of those self-propelled artillery pieces. It's possible that the separatists could have gotten their hands on them. However, they are incredibly complicated to use and require months for a team to be trained in their use. And that is not something that the separatists would have had access to if they were not being aided directly by the Russian military. One of our generals in the region also says that they believe that there are at least 1,000 Russian military forces, members of their military operating in Ukraine as well.